I've done multiple countdowns on the Ultimate 23 Dragon channel. In the early days, one of my most, controversial countdowns was the original version of my top 10 worst NASCAR drivers. Like, seriously, why do people defend Lenton Castle? Anyway, the backlash, even back then in early 2013, was so bad, I offered to the viewers to do their own top 10 worst NASCAR drivers countdown based on tallied votes over an amount of time later that year. Though some of their choices I don't agree with, the same driver who was number 1 in my original countdown was also number 1 in theirs. This driver was a driver who was notorious for crashing, and more crashing. Ironically, when I did the original video, he literally won an ARCA race later that week. I am not making that up. Despite that crashing reputation had stuck with him all throughout his entire career, and even after his career ended. This driver was constantly bashed by fans and media alike because of his constant crashing. And later on, other bizarre things. However, those multitude of crashes very likely caused a lot of harm to him on the inside that caused a situation and death that was so shocking, so horrifying, so tragic, so unfathomable, and yet so bizarre.
Ah yes, another NASCAR bus video that's been a long time in the making.
This is going to be good here.
Was he really as bad as he was perceived?
A career that began at the age of 18 was over by the age of 26.
Hopefully John Wes is okay.
Year of 94 out in front.
There it is.
94 and hard into the wall goes John Wes Townley.
Double shooting that left a former NASCAR driver dead.
John Wes Townley, career win, #1.
Allegedly attacked his ex-wife and a man inside the home with a hatchet.
And there's points for a takedown.
Man fired several shots, hitting Townley.
Townley will win at Daytona.
John died at the hospital.
So, in the aspects of racing, what hasn't been said about John Wes Townley? Let's put it this way. He was not the best. Nowhere close. Between the late 2000s and early 2010s, John was that driver you look out for whenever you hear the commentators point out a crash in a race because you expect him to be in it. Many believe that John started his career in 2008 at the age of 18. However, he actually started racing go-karts at the age of 9 before moving on to the Bandolero Series in 2000, where he won the Thursday Thunder Championship at Atlanta Motor Speedway. Though a lot of his racing history between 2000 and 2005 is unclear, John's first notable major race in a big-time racing division was when he competed in the ASA Late Model Series in 2006, where he finished 5th in points. The following year, in 2007, he won an ASA race at New Sonoya Raceway, while also making 3 starts in what was known as the Hooters Pro Cup Series. He also made 2 starts in the NASCAR K&N East Series, where he crashed out in one of them. In 2008, John had moved up to a full season in the ARCA Series, and got 1 top 5 and 8 top 10s. He also made starts in the Hooters Pro Cup Series. He actually also made his Truck Series and Xfinity Series debuts that year. In his 7 starts for Jack Roush in the Truck Series, he only DNF'd 3 of them due to crashes, albeit 3 of his last 4 starts. In his 3 Xfinity starts for Robbie Benton, however, all 3 resulted in DNFs, and 2 of them were for crashes. Oh yeah, he also had 4 DNQs in Xfinity that year, too. So in 2009, John did the next logical thing. A full season in Xfinity! What? It went as badly as you expect. In 26 starts, he DNF'd 10 times, and 7 of those were due to crashes. 2 of his 3 starts resulting in DNFs not because of crashes also had been crashes earlier in those races. In addition, he was also in spins and crashes in 5 other races that he ended up finishing. He also had 6 DNQs. 2010 is where strange things started to happen in relation to John, and I don't mean just crashes. The original plan was for him to run the entire season with Richard Childress, sure. Through 5 races, his highest finish was only a 15th place at Las Vegas. Despite only 1 DNF due to a crash, John had spins and/or crashes in 4 of the 5 events. So race 6 was Phoenix. And this is where things changed. It started with this practice crash.
First, though, we begin with one unexpected change to your driver lineup for tonight. That has occurred as a result of this wreck in this morning's practice. John Wes Townley spun around and hit the wall hard in turn number 2 in the Richard Childress Racing 21. Because of that hit, Richard Childress has put former series champ Clint Bowyer aboard that car tonight.
There was a multitude of speculation that John was actually released from his ride after that crash. However, Clint Bowyer's pre-race interview gave off a different tone.
How difficult jumping in this situation, Clint?
Well, it is a difficult situation. First of all, we need to say, hopefully John Wes is okay. He hit pretty hard and good family, good kid. He's been doing a good job. He's got the speed. We just got to get, these wrecks, behind us. And hopefully we can have a good night here, get a good finish for the Zaxby Chevrolet and get things headed back in the right direction for him to get back in. By no means do I want to step in this thing full time. He's a deserving up-and-coming driver, and hopefully he can get back in this thing and perform well, on into the year. But for tonight, we're selling chicken. We're going to have some fun.
Though it was never confirmed what had actually happened, it's believed that John had suffered some sort of head injury. Whether it was just a bad headache or a concussion was never truly determined. Regardless, the speculation just kept going and going regarding his status at RCR. ESPN even thought he was fired after the Phoenix crash, something RCR denied. However, John never returned to that team. In fact, it would be another 15 races before he would return at all, reuniting with Robbie Benton's team in Xfinity. He didn't have any incidents in the races he raced for Benton that year. However, he only competed in 4 races, his last race for them being Atlanta. What is believed at this point is right before the Richmond race, where John was scheduled to compete, John had returned to his home state of Georgia due to him taking college courses. However, he never went back to Richmond. It's alleged that John's dad, Tony, called Robbie the day of the race way early in the morning and told him that John had fallen ill and would not be able to compete in the race that weekend. As if this part of the story wasn't weird enough already, John never returned for the remainder of the year after this. In fact, he didn't race whatsoever for the rest of 2010, or at all in 2011. It was like he disappeared. With his crashing reputation, nobody missed him, but looking back on it now, it did feel rather strange that he just randomly disappeared and had not appeared in any capacity for over a year. Early 2012 is when we next heard anything regarding John. It was reported in January that John would make his NASCAR return running a full season in the Truck Series for Robbie Benton. However, a situation arose the following month, right before Daytona. On February 6th, John was drinking while hanging out with friends. He had returned home early due to having to be at the race shop early the following morning to get a race seat fitted for him. However, on the early morning of February 7th, driving in foggy weather, John crashed his BMW running into a pole. With him not having his phone on him, leaving it at home, he appeared at someone's house bleeding and disoriented. The resident called 911, police showed up, found the BMW nearby, and put the pieces together. Then they arrest John for DUI as well as, quote, weaving in the roadway. Okay? Now, Townley was not suspended as a result of the DUI, as NASCAR has actually never suspended a driver for alcohol-related offenses. Otherwise, these drivers would have had a suspension as well. Also, interestingly enough, this was not his first alcohol offense either. In early 2010, John was cited for possessing alcohol at Las Vegas while underage, as he was 20 when that occurred. Now, RAB Racing did make Townley sit out a month as an internal punishment. But in the truck series at that time, it was literally like one race, so. As for NASCAR, they put Townley on probation until the end of 2012 and tested him frequently for alcohol. Literally nothing happened in regards to Townley and alcohol during the remainder of his racing career. So it's probable that it was never an issue ever again, which is good, but I'm not exactly sure is accurate. As for that 2012 season, all the races John was in were for Robbie Benton. There were 5 Xfinity starts, which had no DNFs, but he was in crashes in 3 of the 5 races. However, in the truck series, he was much better. He ran 21 of the 22 races, missing Daytona because of the team's suspension after the DUI incident. His highest finish was an 8th at Pocono. In comparison, the racer who drove his truck at the Daytona race he missed was Travis Quapple, and he finished 4th. The improvements was mainly over the crashing aspect. Only 2 of his DNFs were due to crashes. And he was only in other incidents in only 3 of the other truck races that entire season. The last of those being at race 15 of 22 at Iowa, and it was a simple spin. Compared to past seasons of his and his crashing reputation, that is actually a massive improvement. The only massive side note from 2012 was that 1 cup attempt at Pocono. Yes, there was a plan for John Wes Townley to make a cup start. It didn't get very far, despite the fact the car he was in, Frank Starr's number 32 for Fast Lane Racing, was already locked in on points. On his warm-up lap of opening practice, and no, I am not making that up, John hit the wall coming off turn 2. And that was it. Jason White would be the driver who ended up replacing him. Majority consensus was that Townley was let go from the ride immediately. However, Jason White's explanation gave off a different tone. Quote, I was at an autograph session for the Camping World Truck Series, and Frankie gave me a call and said the driver didn't know if he wanted to run the race. So they wanted to make a driver change. So it sounds like one of 2 things happened. Either John had suffered some sort of injury that was never identified, which with stories regarding his career is unfortunately plausible, or John was totally overwhelmed and did not have a lot of confidence in himself. In the end, this ended up being the closest thing to a Cup Series attempt John Wes Townley ever had. However, this wasn't the end of him racing yet. Not even close. 2013 brought on a lot of changes for John Wes, the first big one being his first major series win. That came at the Daytona ARCA race as he took advantage of a moment from Bobby Gerhart and took the lead and got the win. This literally a few days after my original top 10 worst NASCAR drivers countdown, where he was number 1. I am not making that up. He had 2 starts in the Xfinity Series that year for Venturini Motorsports, with one of them resulting in a crash at Charlotte. There was also a DNQ at Talladega. Another big change, though, was in the form of him moving to a new team in trucks with Red Horse Racing. 2013 would end up being the first year he completed an entire season, having started all 22 races that season. He did statistically better than in 2012, but in both good stats and bad. Yes, he had 7 top 10s that year, but he also had 3 DNFs that season, all due to crashes. In addition, he had incidents in another 5 races that season. 2014 was a wild year for him. Competing in the bulk of the races in 3 different series took a toll on poor John. He was in 15 ARCA races with 4 top 5s and 10 top 10s. He also competed in 11 Xfinity races with a best finish of 13th. However, only 3 of those races resulted in him even finishing in the top 20. His truck season was bad in comparison to past Truck Series seasons. He started driving for Richie Walters, but then his dad bought the team partway through the season. I am not making that up. As for results, he did get his first top 5 and ended up with 2 top 5s and 4 top 10s in the 19 races he competed in that year. But he also had 5 crash DNFs and was involved in incidents in another 5 races that season. This including 3 out of the last 4 races, attributing to 3 of his 5 crash DNFs, resulting in finishes of 33rd or worse. However, the highlight of 2014 for John Wes Townley was very bad. During qualifying for the Pocono ARCA race, John suffered this crash.
World Truck Series had to get away from him over in the tunnel turn.
You see John Wes at exit of the tunnel turn, one of the more difficult turns in all of motorsports there. You look straight at the wall as you enter turn number 2, the tunnel turn, and unfortunately, he got into the wall, exiting the tunnel turn, went to the hospital in Allentown. They said everything's fine, but as we saw him come back to the racetrack, everything's fine, but they're going to hold him out this weekend.
Yeah, and when you say this weekend, that means he's not racing in the ARCA Racing Series event here today or the Camping World Truck Series race here tomorrow.
A look at the 15 car. If you didn't hear us earlier, John Wes Townley crashed in practice, was taken to a local hospital. He has returned and is okay, but will not race this weekend, either in the ARCA race or the Camping World Truck Series race tomorrow. B.J. McLeod jumped in the car, crew chief for Venturini, and trying to help out getting this car on track. It is a backup machine.
Great news, though, for John Wes Townley. The fact he's not injured. They took him to Allentown for precautionary measures and said, you're going to be fine, but we're going to hold you out for 7 days.
John was actually airlifted to the hospital after making note of what he described as hearing a pop in his neck. John was checked out at the hospital and later released. Due to concerns from the medics and doctors, though, he was not cleared to race for the next couple weeks. It was later revealed that John had actually suffered a concussion in the ordeal. The Truck Series was also at Pocono that week, and, like at Phoenix in 2010, Clint Bowyer filled in for him. Bowyer finished 4th at the Pocono truck race Townley missed due to the injury, which in comparison ties Townley's best finish that season in the Truck Series at Charlotte. 2015 was undoubtedly the best season of his NASCAR career. All the races he competed in was for Athenian Motorsports, which was his dad's team. He competed in 18 Xfinity races and only had 1 DNF due to a crash, although he missed 1 Xfinity race at Indianapolis due to a leg injury. His highest finish in Xfinity that year was 13th. As for the Truck Series, he only had 2 truck DNFs due to crashes and only 3 finishes outside of the top 20 in 23 races. So that year was very good for him and better than most expect. His most notable race that year being in Las Vegas, where he started 2nd and remained up front for the entire race. Heck, he was even in contention to win due to strategy. Could you imagine it? John Wes Townley, the driver the fan base nicknamed Drondrex Weekly and Sir Crash-A-Lot, very early into his NASCAR career, actually winning a race? A comment on the Racing Reference page for that race even said, quote, "Just imagine the storm of angry NASCAR fans if Townley won this." Well, in case you don't know, imagine no more.
Here he comes. Here he comes to pit road.
Crafton makes his way to pit road. The caution he was hoping for did not come out. Townley takes the lead. Hermie, here comes Matt Crafton.
Oh, it looks like Townley's out of gas.
88 comes down pit road slowly as we see the 05 still on the racetrack at this time, but Junior Joyner was told by his engineer that he needs 1 second of fuel. So it'll be a quick splash, but a costly splash. But their championship situation, they just could not afford to take a chance. There it is. He's out.
Michael, he said on the radio apparently to Townley to just back it off. He had about 5.5 seconds to play with between him and Cameron Haley.
Well, he lost most of that right there.
Boy, did he.
Lift, coast. 3/4 throttle. I need you to go back to 3/4 throttle. But outside, got a bunch of coming outside. 3/4 throttle here. Give them room. 3/4 throttle.
And here comes Haley
Cameron
right
Haley.
there. That's the 13 right now, back behind him in second place. Vince, how about the 13?
Bob's doing the same thing. The 4 behind.
Well, you can hear the nervousness in the voice of crew chief Jeff Hensley. He's saying, shut it off and coast if you have to. You got to slow way down. We've got over a straightaway to the next position, but you have got to save me some fuel to the end. And now Cameron Haley looks like, is he slowing down? So nervous on this 13 box.
Going her first career wins. Haley definitely slow on the bottom. He's out of fuel.
He's
He
out.
is definitely out.
John West still under power here, coming down for the white flag.
He looks like he's out too, Phil, or is he? Wow.
He is just coasting that 05. Haley definitely out on fumes.
He's got 13 seconds of a lead over Eric Jones, who's going to be your second place truck. He just needs to nurse it around for one lap. Here comes Jones. Is he out?
He's out. He's sweeping back and forth, trying to get fuel into the car, into the truck. And now Townley half a lap away from his first win, and there goes Peters by. Townley down the backstretch. Here comes Peters at full song.
Peters and Ben Kennedy there was John Wes Townley. He's over in turn number 4.
Here he comes.
I think
Can they get
coast.
him? Can they get him at the line? John Wes Townley, career win, number 1.
Yes.
Thanks, guys. This is awesome.
How about Michael Shelton, their championship-winning crew chief with James Busher? He takes John Wes Townley to victory lane.
Chicken sandwiches for everybody.
Absolutely.
John Wes Townley was certainly not the fastest truck in practice. Even in the first grouping of qualifying, all of a sudden came on like a rocket to start on the front row, and he really got the job done here tonight.
I remember watching this race with a couple people. With these events going on, I thought, there is no way this is going to work. If Crafton ran out, there's no way Townley will make it. I still didn't think Townley could win until I saw Justin Haley out of fuel with 2 to go. Then when Timothy Peters passed an out of fuel Eric Jones for second, that is when the realization hit that Townley was going to win. That, and I'd rather have him win than Peters. And though the 2 drivers in this race at that time I was not big with finished 1-2, the driver I more preferred out of the 2 ended up being the one who won. It was a moment of amazement across the entire racing community. However, the consensus was pretty much the same amongst a good chunk of the fan base, including myself. And the consensus was, hell just froze over. Anyway, John finished off his best season in NASCAR and even got a top 10 points finish in the Truck Series with 8th. Would 2016 keep up his momentum? It seemed that way as he won the Daytona ARCA race again for the second time. Running 60% of the ARCA races that year, John actually got 5 top 5s and 7 top 10s. All that in 12 starts. He raced the restrictor plate races in the Xfinity Series with no incident at the Spring Daytona and Talladega races. He was supposed to compete in the Summer Daytona race, but ended up withdrawing. The reason, however, will be revealed shortly. The Truck Series, however, tells the rest of the 2016 story for John Wes Townley. Through the first 8 truck races of 2016, John was not able to keep up the momentum and success that he had in 2015. Sure, he had a 7th place finish at Atlanta, but then his next highest finish was 16th at Charlotte. On a massive downturn, surely things couldn't get any worse, right? Well, race 9 that year was Gateway. And you know what that means. First, there was this incident with Spencer Gallagher.
And he noticed that Eric Jones was running 3 or 4
Yellow
feet. Caution's
caution.
out.
John Wes Townley brings out the caution with 17 laps remaining, and we're going to have a restart.
Wow, John West was having a good run, too, running up in the top 10. See the damage to the left side of that Zaxby Chevy.
Roll right there. Get rolling.
Certainly one of the best runs of the season for John Wes Townley tonight up until this point.
Move there, John.
Townley won a race last year at Vegas. Hasn't been able to put it all together this season. Best finish of 7th at Atlanta, the second race of the campaign. But haven't been inside the top 15 since.
See all the damage to the left side of that truck. Quite a bit of damage.
Backed it in the left rear and then slapped the whole left side in. Yeah, that thing's hurt bad.
Oh, another restart coming.
Well, that's what John Hunter Nemechek wanted, right? I mean, he had to have that. It's what Christopher Bell didn't want.
And it's Matt Crafton. There's a whole bunch of guys that, with the exception of Christopher Bell, that wanted this restart.
Everybody wanted it other than Bell, right?
Watch that replay. It looked like Spencer Gallagher got in the quarter panel and
helped him around a little.
Definitely got a little help. Hard hit.
Tough break. And from their side of it, you know, it's not really a tough break. They got run into. You know,
right.
I'm sure there was no intent involved with that, but nonetheless, the contact was there.
Yeah, nothing John West did wrong.
And that's why sometimes we talk about finishing positions and guys having a good stretch or a bad stretch. And it's the finishing position can sometimes be so deceiving, because John Wes Townley was having a good run tonight, a top 10 caliber run this evening, and he's not going to get that kind of finish.
No, that's a shame, really. Get inside of 20 laps to go and you get taken out of a top 10 run here.
After some time repairing the truck, Townley returned to the track, just for this to happen.
John Wes Townley and Spencer Gallagher together.
Remember, these guys got together before when John Wes got turned around into the outside wall.
Yeah, I'm going to say this time it's not coincidence.
Well, these trucks are both very heavily damaged, and this is going to be a little more cleanup time.
Now, this had the appearance of retaliation from Townley's standpoint, although I question that, because how could you get retaliation from the outside lane with the angles that were noted by the not-so-good replays by Fox? But then, what transpired afterward became one of the most viral moments in 2016.
We've been told that Matt Crafton has been released from the infield care center. Declined the opportunity to speak with our reporter as John Wes Townley and Spencer Gallagher exchanging words. And oh, they're going at it. This is going to be good here.
Oh, the trucks aren't coming.
John Wes Townley and Spencer Gallagher down there in turn 1. And there's points for a takedown. And the fans are loving it. Townley and Gallagher. John Wes Townley landed a couple of good blows there. And I'm not sure if the fight was over or they just got too tired to continue.
Yeah, I knew it wasn't coincidence those two trucks were sitting there tore up.
With John Wes Townley and Spencer Gallagher will be going to the NASCAR trailer after the race for a little sit down.
Well, they're going to go to the infield care center first, fortunately in separate ambulances, and then they will have to go to the NASCAR hauler and await the officials after the race to have a chat.
And how does that chat typically go, Phil?
Usually not well.
Todd,
if you're on that side of it.
Share a little of your experience.
I was joking with the officials earlier. I actually had my name embroidered in one of them chairs in that hauler for a while. Yeah, that's not fun. I've been in there a few times, not for fighting, never for fighting, but it's never a fun conversation. I can tell you that.
Well, we've seen it all tonight.
They reminded me of the sumo wrestlers, you know, the Japanese sumo wrestlers.
They wore out though at the end, didn't they? I mean, they need to work on their fitness.
Well, they did run 154 laps here in very, very hot temperatures, Mitch. You're going to have to give them the benefit of the doubt.
I am not giving them the benefit of the doubt. They wore out and couldn't finish the fight. If you're going to fight, you got to at least have enough left in there to finish and left in the tank. Well, they're going to go to the Infield Care Center, and then, as mentioned, they'll go to the NASCAR hauler for a little visit.
I wonder if they have separate rooms in the Infield Care Center.
They did take them in separate vehicles. Okay. Okay, Vince gives us an opportunity to tell you that on Wednesday, the all-new Ultimate Fighter, women's bantamweight champion Miesha Tate pays a surprise visit to Team Claudio practice, and 2 strawweights face off in the octagon. I'm sure I mispronounced that word. Not octagon. I think I got that one right.
And now will Spencer Gallagher and John Wes Townley be there?
I don't think in the women's bantamweight championship. No.
It'll be the undercard though.
Yeah, the Ultimate Fighter, Wednesday, 10 o'clock Eastern and Pacific, only on FS1. My guess is though that John Wes and Spencer are going to get a lot of TV time for this incident in other places. That'll be seen throughout the social media world and the broadcast television world.
You think we might see a little bit of that on Race Hub on Monday?
And then
part 2.
Yeah, and then here's the sequel. John Wes Townley and Spencer Gallagher, and they had just about enough of one another. And some things just don't need commentary, so I'm just going to let you watch.
Yeah. I think they were talking the whole time while they were doing this, looks like.
John Wes Townley actually had a smile on his face there. I think he was enjoying himself. And it has been determined that Townley, because of a couple of the blows that he landed and the one takedown, that he will be determined the winner. 8-2.
Yeah.
Now, I don't want you high school referees, wrestling officials out there hitting us up on Twitter, complaining about our judgment calls. Our ruling is final. It's an 8-2 decision for John Wes Townley.
Did you happen to see the fight? We had it scored 8-2 for John Wes Townley. Did you happen to get a look at it, Daniel?
From what I heard, that was pretty close to what score I heard.
All right, thanks for the confirmation on that. Finish this thing off, buddy.
I appreciate it, boys. Thank you.
This fight, if that's what you want to call it, went viral. And not for good reasons. Because the fans see both John Wes Townley and Spencer Gallagher as daddy's money drivers. Seeing 2 drivers that fit that category in a tussle was more hilarious than serious. Multiple sources that have nothing to do with NASCAR covered it. UFC mocked it.
With no UFC event going down last weekend, the guys over at NASCAR actually filled in for us.
They did.
Saturday during the Camping World Truck Series, Spencer Gallagher and John Wes Townley went at it after a crash where both their vehicles wrecked. I'm curious what you think of their technique.
Yeah, well, of course, he's got him in the tie plumb here, and they're kind of grappling, but he throws him to the floor. But he hits a sweep to get up. He hits the body lock. He's trying to go for the guillotine. But we see here the immense pressure being put on the midsection. He obviously trains with the great Kenny Florian. He goes for a takedown here, and you think, oh, I know, cheeky little leg sweep. Puts it in, executes perfectly. Oh, no, he doesn't. Falls down, breaks his back, and he thinks, I know, I'll just hug your head.
Immense technique. I mean, that's tremendous technique. There's the Michael Bisping getup right there, posting on his hand. Wants nothing to do with the ground game. And then, what is that, a headlock? Oh, let me comb your hair with a couple punches. And then you see him controlling the hand there. So focused in the clinch. There's another comb of the hair. I'm not sure those are punches. But, yeah, that fight is terrible.
And then all of a sudden, they're gassed. That's it. They're done. They're like, yeah, okay.
Fox had Jim Ross of the WWE do commentary for it because of the DDT.
Certainly high drama, ladies and gentlemen, here at the Gateway Motorsports Park. This is a very volatile situation indeed because Townley's smirking. This could be a very dangerous situation for these 2 men. John Wes Townley, who loves that Zaxby's chicken, and who doesn't, getting out of his car, unfolding here. Spencer Gallagher is obviously irate. Turn the children away. It's not going to get pretty here. What the hell is this? There's a takedown on the concrete. They're rolling around like two old women. My God, there's like two trust fund babies. John Wesley Townley with a seat roll. Now he's got a front face lock. What's he doing here? Oh, my God. My God, it's a DDT, ladies and gentlemen. The DDT scores on the pavement. Let him go. He's got a family, for God's sakes. And they love chicken. My God, it's a slobber knocker. The Zaxby people are good people. The chicken man's trying to get a chicken wing on his opponent. Let me tell you one thing. You want to talk about toughness? You know who's tough out there? The damn concrete, not those two yahoos. They're grasping each other like they're going to the senior prom, my God.
And others noted Dean Ambrose's finishing move known as Dirty Deeds, but it was a DDT. I watch wrestling, I'd know. Even multiple ESPN shows that Monday that weren't SportsCenter talked about it. I even covered that in my WTF Moments of 2016 video.
What grade would you give to this NASCAR Truck Series fight?
Okay, I'm going to wait. I'm going to hold my grade until we watch this. These guys come out like, whoa, there's takedowns. There's going to be hair pulling, like maybe some kicking. There might be some haymakers. And then all of a sudden, right around here, even though there's one more takedown, it gets real slow. And then after that, that's the last highlight. So I'm going F-. A guy tried to give him noogies.
F-.
But he doesn't get the noogies off.
The guy in blue has apologized. There's two things.
Why? Why is he apologizing?
Because he thinks he should apologize. There's two things of note in this. One is that nobody on either crew
just walk away.
Came out to save their drivers. In a baseball fight, the first punch, there's 80 people on the field, right?
Yeah.
Nobody came out on this. And the second thing is, these are truck drivers, and truck drivers are usually big, burly guys who spend a lot of time drinking coffee.
What are you supposed to do?
So,
what do you want to do? You wanted to throw haymakers? Come on.
And you fellas have some work to do because you have to grade this NASCAR Truck Series fight? Question mark? Adon, go ahead. Tell us what we're seeing here.
We're seeing about a C-plus effort there. I mean, at least they did more than talk. If you're going to do something, they did something. They didn't do a whole lot. It took like 30 seconds for them to start punching. I mean, I bet Jose Bautista wishes it went down like that instead of what happened to him.
Ooh. No, you got to go F-. First of all, one of those dudes was trying to fight in a chicken suit, which is ironic to such a degree that it makes it almost impossible to get into that match. But then once you saw them actually fighting, I don't know how many fights the Zaxby's dude had been in, but he looked like he watched a lot of wrestling matches. He was trying suplexes and DDTs.
Yeah, you did the old foot hook trying to bring somebody down. F- is the grade. Point, Bomani Jones.
Do you question the toughness of these fighters?
All right, we're going to St. Louis, NASCAR truck race. Sounds like a real classy affair.
Have you seen this? It feels like something out of Ricky Bobby. It feels like something out of, I mean, look at this. This is unbelievable, though. This looks like a spoof of a race car fight.
Declined the opportunity to speak with our reporters, John Wes Townley and Spencer Gallagher.
How you gonna fight with a chicken suit on, though? Isn't that ironic? Oh, wow, like that.
This is where it escalates, right here. That's not much of a fight.
Why can't?
Yeah, there it is. We reached a stalemate situation. I'm going to suplex him. Oh.
Oh, he tried to DDT him. They both want to quit so bad, but you can't.
I'm going to get back up, and I'm going to do that thing again where I throw you on my body.
Why is this still going on?
Somebody throw a punch. There it is. There it is.
The best part is how no one is bothered to break this up, right? No one thinks this even needs to be broken up. No one is going to get hurt.
Where is the pit crew? Where is everybody else? There's a guy right there.
There we
Okay.
go.
An asbestos official arrives.
Both of them are so glad for that TV timeout. Woo! I was a little tired there. It's a little hot in this suit.
I think that I finally found a couple of guys that you might be able to beat up.
Yeah.
That's right.
Both at the same time.
Two of them at the
Let's
same
go.
time.
Let's go. I'll take both of you.
Everyone laughed at it. Multiple people mocked it. Heck, I'm guilty of this myself. I even made a WWE Titantron video for John with the chicken dance song as the music, and no, I am not making that up. Now, ready for this part to turn dark? The penalty ended up being fines to both drivers, $15,000 for John and $12,500 for Spencer. John ended up sitting out the next 2 truck races, but not because of a NASCAR suspension. In one of, maybe even both crashes, John had suffered what was described as concussion-like symptoms, but was later found out to have been an actual concussion. Yeah, he was suffering from a concussion while in this tussle with Spencer Gallagher. It's also believed that John actually was unable to recall the fight until he saw a replay of the event. He remembered the crashes, but not the fight. Did Gallagher know something was wrong and didn't know how to stop John in his concussed state? I questioned that in the 2016 video. Gallagher later stated that he was a pacifist and learned a lesson after this regarding NASCAR and fights, but I'm not exactly sure I buy that from Spencer. So after dealing with the crash, fight, and concussion, likely as a result of not one, but both crashes at Gateway and missing out on a couple of races, not only in trucks, but also in ARCA, John competed in the next 9 races, with his last racing start being the 2016 Texas Roadhouse 200 at Martinsville. Okay. Among those starts, he had 4 finishes between 10th and 13th, but the other 5 were in the 20s. However, there were 3 races left to go in the 2016 season. Well, before those races, John ended up injured again in what was described as a non-racing incident, injuring his left ankle. Not being cleared and healing slowly, Cody Coughlin at Texas, Dylan Lipton at Phoenix, and Brady Boswell at Homestead finished out the season for him and his team. Surprisingly, I found out rather quickly what actually happened. It's as stupid as it sounds. John actually injured his left ankle doing skateboard tricks the day he proposed to the lady. I am not making that up. However, this chapter has a most unexpected ending. In early 2017, around the same time as the surprising yet much welcome retirement of Carl Edwards, John Wes Townley had also decided to retire, with the supposed given reason being him moving on to focus on other endeavors, including his upcoming marriage, and completing the college courses he started a long while back. The most common belief being him completing college to become the successor to his dad's portion of Zaxby's. So, in the end, his stats in the known racing series are as follows. No Cup starts whatsoever. 76 Xfinity starts, with his best finish being 13th, where he finished in 3 races. 110 truck starts, with 1 win at Las Vegas, 5 top 5s, and 24 top 10s. 58 ARCA starts, with 2 wins at Daytona, 15 top 5s, and 30 top 10s. Over 50% of his ARCA starts resulted in top 10s. Honestly impressive, getting his crashing reputation amongst the fans. So, after the announcement of John's retirement from racing, he wasn't heard from again whatsoever. He wasn't a social media type, so he didn't really post anything. So, we never heard anything regarding him ever again. Until we were notified of the events of the night of October 2nd, 2021. So, October 3rd, 2021 at 11 a.m. I was checking for headlines and looked at Reddit before the supposed start of the Talladega Cup race. I saw a post with the title of, and a screenshot. The screenshot was from John Wes Townley's Wikipedia page indicating that he had died. Being the skeptic I am, I didn't believe it. A few minutes later, the post was deleted. I checked to see the page myself and saw no source whatsoever. About 15 minutes later, a clarification post, that was also later taken down, was made showing the page being edited to eliminate what we thought was a death hoax. Now, I I have seen absurd death hoaxes before, but not in racing. For the next 3 hours, including waiting on a rain delay at Talladega, multiple times I asked myself, who would make a death hoax against John Wes Townley of all people? Well, right before 2:45 p.m., I receive a text. I saw the text, and it was a link to a tweet from Jayski along with the words, "Geez, this is awful." And I'm going, wait. Because the person who texted me that would not say that in regards to a Talladega rainout. So hesitantly, I clicked on the link, and the headline we saw earlier that morning that we thought was a bizarre death hoax was unfortunately real. Not only was John Wes Townley's death confirmed, it was also confirmed he was killed in a shooting. At this point, people wanted answers. Who shot him? Why? What over? Well, as we started getting more and more answers, the story just kept getting darker and darker and darker. The first update to the story we saw was from Darian Gilliam's Twitter account, where he posted a screenshot along with the words, "Starting to get more details on the John Wes Townley story. Very dark." This is where things start getting bizarre. Townley was reported to have entered a house armed with an axe, where another guy shot him and a lady. The lady being shot being ruled accidental by police. Okay, hang on a sec. What I was trying to figure out at this point was, why an axe? Two things crossed my mind when I read that. Was John desperately trying to save the lady from a guy with a gun, and the axe was the closest thing to him? Or had something happened to John's mental state? And then we get the second update, which was the first press release from the police. In it, it says that they responded to a shooting and found John and the lady, who were both shot. They also say after John arrived, he and the guy had an altercation involving a hatchet. The guy fired his gun, quote, several times, and both John and the lady were hit. John and the lady were taken to the hospital, where John died. Now, at this point, I had even more questions. Was John going there to confront the second guy? Would the second guy face manslaughter? What is considered as several shots in this instance? Seriously, why an axe or a hatchet, which is actually smaller? And then on a different aspect, two other questions I think most of us had. The first one being, was John intoxicated? He has had a history of alcohol issues, albeit nothing we know of since 2012. And second, and more fearfully, was John suffering from any mental health issues? And worst case scenario, and most specifically, CTE. How many crashes has he had in his career? We know he's had a lot. Now we get to the third update, which was an official field case report, which issues a few differences from the second update. A. The call officially was in regards to the lady being shot, but nothing regarding John. B. It's documented that John was shot through the chest. C. John was described as the lady's ex-husband. D. The divorce between John and the lady was finalized that week. And E. The second report says that John attacked the guy only, but this report says he also attacked the girl. So essentially, John going after the guy is confirmed. However, whether or not he actually went after the lady is up in the air because of the discrepancy of both reports and the fact the only listed injuries to the lady was from the guy's gun. While searching deeper to see if there is other info out there, I found one article that revealed a couple of different pieces of info that the other reports did not. The first thing that I saw, which I do not recall on any report whatsoever, was that in August of 2019, Townley was charged with 3 misdemeanor counts, one being described as family violence battery, another described as simple battery. Now, he did plead guilty to the third one, which was disorderly conduct, about 3 weeks after whatever happened, and that resulted in a 12-month probation, so 1 year probation. But the other 2 charges were dropped. The other thing that I found out was regarding the divorce. The official field case report had stated that the divorce was finalized just that week. However, the article reveals that the divorce was filed in February of 2021, and it was John who filed for divorce, not the lady. Now, at this point, I feel like there was much more to this story. So I decided to investigate some things in regards to John even further than what we mostly knew regarding him. Because there were some things regarding his death that weren't adding up. And I feel that, tragically, his racing career just may have been very likely a factor to a lot of things. And believe me, a lot of people felt that way too. Come to find out, it may have been even more than just that. There were a lot of things that I had discovered while looking for any information in regards to not only John that day, but throughout his entire career and, maybe by chance, his own life. The first major thing I discovered was his whereabouts earlier the day of his death. A person close to him named Jeff Hood, who was a Zaxby's worker, stated that he managed to catch up with John at the Arkansas-Georgia college football game. Because of this and the usual atmosphere of a college sporting event, the questions of whether John was intoxicated or not was amplified, even if only just 6 hours before his death. Another common theme I noticed rather quickly in my searches is that in John's early NASCAR days, he had a lot of confidence issues, specifically within himself. It was more towards himself than from anyone else, including his critics. After the Phoenix incident in 2010, his last moment in the car for Richard Childress, John is believed to have taken a break and stepped away to sort a few things out. In his return later that year for Robbie Benton, things seem to have been going well, as Robbie wanted John, quote, to just have fun and to start enjoying racing again. However, during that time, John was bad at overcoming self-observations. It was that September before the Richmond race that John had disappeared. The initial assumption was one of 2 things. Either John was ill, or that Tony was unsatisfied with the team's performance. Later on, after John's 2012 return, John revealed that he got discouraged in regards to racing and disappeared for an entire year! In his 2011 disappearance, during a time where there was actually an assumption among some that he swore off racing, John had actually set out to make improvements to himself. At the time of the 2010 Fall Richmond weekend, he didn't know where he was and said he needed to rethink deeply what he wanted out of life. Basically taking it easy to think about what he wanted to do in relation to racing. John wasn't happy without racing, and he still had that dream to be one of the big guys in the Cup Series, like that of his racing hero, Jeff Gordon. That I found interesting, considering a lack of confidence in himself, is why he pulled himself from the 32 Cup car when he had an locked-in ride at Pocono after brushing the wall. a lot of what I mentioned here was mentioned by John after he won the 2013 Daytona ARCA race. A lack of confidence in himself, and likely a hidden fear of what others in NASCAR think of him, could also explain the concussion baseline test situation of 2014. When John took the test to get a proper baseline, he wasn't sure what he was doing the first time. He requested a baseline test redo because he was worried that they, and NASCAR, would wonder, what the heck is he doing on the track? Although it may have factored into him missing races after suffering a concussion during the Pocono ARCA and Truck weekend that year, in the end it was a good thing that he did do that redo test so his brain could get proper rest and not sustain even more damage. Another thing I noticed was after his 2012 return, John wanting to prove his detractors wrong. I noticed this after he won the Daytona ARCA race, and especially after he won the Las Vegas Truck race in 2015. The funny thing about that particular race was John's biggest critic outside of himself, Jeff Gluck, eating at Zaxby's for an entire week after that win. And in one of those days, Jeff actually met John. The notice of a lack of confidence and fear what others think of him was also on display after the 2016 Gateway debacle. Because of 2014, he was afraid of sitting out due to a potential concussion, but later took it upon himself to sit out as he wasn't feeling well. However, the feeling lingered to the point that he eventually went to NASCAR and expressed how he felt anyway. An article said that John Wes Townley had attention deficit disorder, or ADD, and that caused him to dismiss the symptoms. Another article also claimed that John had obsessive-compulsive disorder, or OCD, but got the concussion year wrong. So though I can buy John having ADD, I do not buy him having OCD. The notice of John having concerns of what others thought was also on display when he said in an article that he, quote, didn't want to have the reputation of a loose cannon. He also claimed that the brakes went out during the second incident with Spencer Gallagher at Gateway, which I'm not sure I buy with him being on the outside lane. John's truck had massive damage to the driver's side door after the first wreck, and Gallagher's truck was hitting the driver's side door afterwards in the second wreck, which likely caused more damage to John. One of the biggest clues that I discovered that puts all this together is the fact that John saying he was retiring from racing to go back to college was a decoy. Many had already believed that Townley retired due to the effects of past injuries, most specifically his head injuries, during the off-season of 2016. Although John said in an article that his dream was to be one of the big guys in the Cup Series, and he didn't want to cut his career short, in July of 2016, it has been confirmed that an injury shortening his racing career was in fact the reason Townley retired after 2016. As confirmed by his own obituary. A month after his death, not many were still following this case, but some did, and some things were discovered. The first thing noted was that the reason John Wes Townley had filed for divorce. It's not much, but what was discovered was him saying the marriage was, quote, irretrievably broken. Make note that this is John saying that. An article updating the situation a month after it happened revealed quite a few interesting things. There was a reviewing of the lab test results of items sent to the Georgia Bureau of Investigation Crime Lab, although it is unknown if this includes a toxicology test on John. It also reports that John had to complete a, quote, family violence intervention program. But the biggest thing revealed was that the third report, the official field case report, was mostly incorrect. The divorce was not finalized that week. This now opened the assumptions that it was a setup from the guy and the girl to murder John in order to get things from him, most specifically his money. This also casted doubt that John attacked the girl at all, considering multiple reports say that she was, quote, accidentally hit by the guy's gun, and that was her only reported injury. I'm not so sure she was targeted by Townley at all, although the guy was. Do I believe this was a setup from the guy and the lady? Absolutely not. I believe there's way more that happened than we will ever know. And most especially with John's mental state. One of the more common things I see regarding this was the belief that Townley was, quote, unhinged or at the end of his rope. There is some merit to this. The main thing being, if John Wes Townley actually wanted to kill someone, why would he want to kill someone with an axe and or hatchet and not, a gun? Regarding this information that's available, I feel the axe and or hatchet was likely a scare tactic to provoke the guy to kill John. The most common consensus was that John was very troubled and needed some mental help, but unfortunately didn't get it. What else was going on with John that we did not know? USA Today questioned about stress. Another source mentioned body weight fluctuation issues. It definitely sounded like he had a lot of emotional issues or troubles. Were head injuries a factor into that? His only known temper issues only seemed to concern Spencer Gallagher. The biggest question throughout all of this was, what exactly was John Wes Townley dealing with on the inside? He did say he had attention deficit disorder. There's a very common belief on the internet that he had suffered from affluenza. Was Tony overprotective of John as believed in 2010? Did Tony not know how to deal with John's emotions? Did John not know? Did he have other issues he, let alone we, did not know about? Was the ADD diagnosis actually a misdiagnosis? That's what happened to Shane Meal. So it wouldn't be surprising if it happened again. How long did John Wes Townley deal with the alcohol or substance issues? Was he dealing with all of this even before the bulk of his racing career? John was asked in the early 2010s if he had a drinking problem, and his answer was he didn't know. Also assuming a toxicology test was done, was John intoxicated the night he died? Even then, all these years later, there is no true answer regarding any of those questions. And then, of course, there's the biggest question of all in regards to this tragedy that a lot of people have had. And you know exactly what question it is. Was John Wes Townley suffering from CTE? If you really reflect on his career, crashes is pretty much what you'll remember most often. And a lot of his crashes were very hard. How many of them have resulted in concussions? There are 2, maybe 3 or 4 that have been confirmed, depending on which source you believe. But how many unknown ones were there? Honestly, I'd say quite a lot. Now, am I as confident that he had CTE like I am with Leroy Yarbrough and Eric McClure? Not as confident as I am with them, but I'd say there's a pretty good chance that John Wes Townley had CTE as well. And if he did, that could have played a role into what happened that night. Because of that, another commonly asked question is if his brain was donated for CTE research. Like with Eric McClure, I don't believe so. And as I said in the Eric McClure video, that's his family's decision, and we should respect it as such. Also regarding the family, and this is the main reason this video took so long to make, I was curious if they would have filed a wrongful death lawsuit against the guy in regards to this situation. The statute of limitations to file a wrongful death lawsuit in the state of Georgia is 2 years. So naturally, I waited a little bit after 2 years after the tragedy to see if anything came up. Nothing did. So based off that, I assume there has never been a wrongful death lawsuit in regards to John Wes Townley's passing. And that pretty much concludes the story, but even then, we are without answers on a lot of things, even all these years later. Mainly about John Wes Townley's mental health history, whether CTE was among the issues, and what he was really trying to do the night he died. Although, honestly, I do have an educated guesstimation in regards to that last question. So what do I believe the truth is in regards to John Wes Townley going to that house that night? I was actually asked about that on a community post from Darian when the tragedy happened, and wrote out the response, which is on screen now. Basically, using all the pieces of the puzzle that we have in regards to the tragedy, the only possible conclusion I could come up with then, even all these years later, is still the only answer that I feel is the most likely answer today. The only conclusion that I could come up with is that John Wes Townley's death was a suicide that was intended to look like a homicide. Is this the actual truth? We'll never know. But based on all the evidence, I feel this is the most likely answer. Either way, regardless on how you feel about it, John Wes Townley's story and death is one that shouldn't be ignored. His story should be one of a precaution. Yes, us racing fans have ridiculed him basically his entire career, and honestly, rightfully so. But even without his concussion issues, it's apparent he was struggling on the inside. Many people who claim to have known him at some point have told some disturbing tales, even before the known concussions he has had. A lot of those stories seem to match up in some capacity, making their validity even more likely. And at the same time paints a very tragic picture of someone who needed help from the very start in multiple capacities, but never got it. And the concussions that followed during his ill-fated racing career makes his story, and the ending to it, even more catastrophic. He pursued racing, though he probably should have pursued something else. Anything else. Probably playing the piano based on the stories I've seen. The pursuit of his racing career probably made his internal and mental issues even worse than they initially were. He'll go down as one of the worst drivers in the history of auto racing, who is still ridiculed to this day. But given how his story ended, his story should also be a precautionary one. In the end, the lady and the guy are both doing very well in life today.
and everyone wishes them well. Hope they're at peace now and have been able to move on from all of this. And honestly, I hope John Wes Townley is at peace now too. Whether you agree with me on that or not is up to you, but you can't deny that John Wes Townley struggled very much. Whether it be because of issues on the inside no one, not even he, knew about or understood, or because of the concussions he suffered from his racing career is up for much, much debate. And honestly, it was probably both. But at a magnitude that no one could have comprehended.